Mackenzie County since the end of 2022. And I won't go at length, I'm sure you guys have questions. I'm really excited to be potentially coming back to work with this team. You have a wonderful library and a wonderful library staff. I'm very excited at the prospect of what we might be able to achieve together. I'll let you guys get your questions, I'm sure you have them. Or not.
Very broadly speaking, what is your overarching goals in a director position to lead a library forward?
And so the answer to that question actually depends a lot on the library, right? Our library over in Mackenzie County is very small, so I actually had a really great opportunity to meet our community kind of as the front of the house there. A lot of what you guys have talked about today, things like patron suggestions and interaction with the community was happening directly through me. The paper came and talked to us, the commissioners came to talk to us, and we started trying to implement policies that patrons wanted. Things like Saturday morning hours, for instance, our library didn't offer. Several patrons came in, talked to us, and talked to me in my office about, what about Saturdays? You guys are only open till 6 o'clock. We'd love to have an opportunity to get into the library. We'll get into the weeds here a little bit, but the scale of the library there is a small one. So the problems that we were facing there are very different than the ones we're looking at here in Dickinson. Our issues there were program attendance, bodies in the door, and kind of modernizing the library. Here you don't have those same issues. We have an incredible team, we have wonderful programs, and a lot of people coming through the door. It sounds like what our issue is high level engagement with the community. People feel like they're not being listened to. So that sounds like it's something that we could particularly take some time to work on. And moreover, just having worked at this library before, the team is our strength, but structure has always been something we've needed to tweak a little bit. And so in the early days here, since I'm not on the ground just yet, the structure of the library is something we're going to be looking into in terms of staff. And we're working on tools for engagement here with you guys, here with the public. Working on ways to make people feel like they're heard and that the library is there and of service to them. And what I would hope is every capacity you could want. This is what we're going to aim for.
Thank you.
Do you have any new activity ideas?
Programming is done by an impressive team. Jade and I are good friends. I'm excited to meet your new programming librarians. So while I have some thoughts, things that have worked particularly well, like we started a seed library. We started some book exchanges, which were really popular with patrons. Our stuff, I would love to look at it. You guys have a really full programming calendar, so I wouldn't drop those on the library until I work with the programming team to make sure I'm not being disruptive.
Can you just pronounce your last name one more time for us?
That is Anguiano.
Yeah, thank you. Let's just resort to Ian.
It is what our county commissioners do up in Mackenzie County as well. It's just Ian or library.
Library, yeah. Library.
With the proposed remodel, expansion, revitalization, whatever you want to call it at this point, because I certainly don't know what to call it. We've done some significant changes to what is and isn't to be added. I'm sure you'll see that at a later date and be just as overwhelmed as we were. What are your thoughts on using the space that we have as is blueprinted now, that I'm sure you'll see in a bit, to expand the library from where it currently sits now?
So I haven't gotten to see where the plans are currently, but I do have a history with the expansion project. As I mentioned, I'm also a member of the Library Foundation Board, so I have been working with them on the expansion kind of since day one, when it was a much larger program. I'd love to see where we are now. I know we have some very pressing space needs. A lot of discussion has gone into potentially turning the downstairs into a children's only section, moving adult nonfiction upstairs. I think that's a great idea. Keeping children's materials in an area where it's just for children. Makes a lot of sense, right on its nose. We also have a really large collection that is swiftly running out of space, so I'd be very interested to see what Bartlett and West has for us that's gonna allow us to make the most of that with a potentially smaller budget, and project scope from where we were originally sitting. I hope that's not too vague an answer for you.
My question was just as vague, so I think we're doing all right.
All right, good stuff.
You mentioned you currently sit on the foundation board for the library. Is that a position you would have to resign if you were hired? Is there,
Yes, I would have to resign because the library director is an ex officio member of that board, and so I would not be able to continue serving as secretary because I would be the library director.
I have a question for you, Ian. What would you say you see the library should be for the community of Dickinson?
Well, I'd like to think here in Dickinson, we're very fortunate that the library is already something of a community hub. I'd like to enhance that, and more importantly, I'd like it to be a place where you're very confident that it's an area you can go to for both education and enrichment. It's been a focus for me up in McKenzie County, and it's one I really like to emphasize here. Some of how we've done that is really engaging with our homeschool families. I don't know how familiar you folks are with the McKenzie County area. It's a little more rural, so we have a lot of homeschooling families that weren't really seeing service when we were working there prior to my arrival, and our engagement with them has really driven numbers upward and given the collection a little bit more focus, as well as letting us engage a little bit more actively with the community. It brought in a lot of kids, it brought in a lot of parents who weren't really utilizing our space before. I know we don't have those same issues here in Dickinson, but I'd love for us to be viewed in a similar way as far as an educational resource for families in a partner to schools. Particularly since we're fortunate to also have a university here in town. I would love to really build on the partnerships we already have with those institutions.
Thank you.
any other questions?
I'm asking for a recommendation to the board to approve Ian as the new library director, so I can take it as a recommendation to the city commission on the 23rd.
I have some comments, but Ian, I don't wanna make you stand up for those comments, so I wanna make sure we're done asking him questions, and then I need to address some things, please.
Good. All right, thank you.
I just want to take some time to share a little bit, my experience. I've sat on this board for 6 months, and there is not one meeting that I come away from not shocked by something that has happened. And last meeting, was not any different from the last. Hearing at the very tail end of the meeting that we had hired a new director came as quite a shock to me. I have taken time to study bylaws, and I've taken time to look at Century Code and what our responsibilities and roles look like as a library board. And to me, it was super disappointing to be maybe the odd one out who was uninformed, I'm not sure. But to hear from Linda last time that they had hired a director, and I had not heard a thing about number of said, there has been a panel and 2 members from the board were there, library staff, and again, I sat baffled by this process that is taking place. To me, ethically, we sit as 6 members on this board, and to my knowledge, 2 members held information that the other members did not hold. That is not ethically acceptable. The fact that all the members on this board were not informed is a problem. In Century Code, it says the general powers and duties of the board of directors. 403804 bullet point 6 says to employ qualified personnel to administer the public library and dispense library services. 2 times within our Dickinson area public library bylaws, it states in Article Section 3 and again in Article 7, Section 1. They're listed there for you. Excuse me for missaying them. The board shall employ and supervise a qualified library director. Again, the board of directors will employ and supervise a qualified library director. I even took time this afternoon to go on the internet and look at the trustee manual, as that is something that we have discussed in the past. And again, it said the board of directors will employ a library director. How was a panel chosen and all of the people that sit on this board not informed? How do I sit here as a single female and don't have a secure spot on that panel of interview? To me, it's hard for me to not walk away from this situation and feel discriminated against. To me, it's unacceptable. So, Ian, it is no offense to you. You sound like a great candidate. But to me, this process has been done wrong. And on top of that, never in my life, I'm only 42 years old, but never in my life I talked to my dad on the phone, and he is 70 years old, and he agreed with me. Never have I heard of an employee sitting on an interview panel for their potential boss. Like, what is that all about? So, I personally just need to share with you, I do not use my time to sit on this board just for you to bring a person, a candidate forward, and I say, yay. I am here truly to bring integrity and accountability to the areas that need it. If this library board is truly going to abide by state law concerning our local library, that we have the responsibility for hiring this position at hand, we need to make a policy surrounding this so that it is clear and concise. And to me, even more so, Danny would speak about hiring new library employees. That's actually our job. It's vested in the library board. And so I feel like I need to bring attention to that today because it's not correct.
Can we, I'd ask, where is it vested in us to hire library employees outside the director?
It says all library, Century Code is to employ qualified personnel. So that is like general.
To administer. We employ qualified personnel to administer.
Yes, so that would be,
They administer for us then.
Yeah, the library, I mean.
We hire the library director to administer for us.
right, I'm just saying, I believe that Century Code 403804, to employ qualified personnel, that is not singular in that sense, that it would be the staff of the library.
I would say it's the administrative staff. To
Okay.
administer the public, I mean, like, I understand where you're coming from, like, I see how you're reading that, the way you're reading it, but the way I would.
That
read
is
it-
really truly not my point
Sure, yeah,
today,
no,
to tackle that beast.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that another day. The issue at hand is the position at hand. and it is the library director. And my question is, if the law has given us responsibilities and duties, how has this been done correctly?
Right now is our opportunity to make a decision to employ this person or not. We are being given our opportunity. One. Two, every position I've been hired for as a chair or things like that, I have had a potential employee sit in on that hiring committee.
Yeah, that's fairly common.
It's fairly common.
I've
Yeah.
never heard of that.
Yeah, we do that at the hospital.
For leadership positions in particular, it is very common to have a potential subordinate be under committee.
I just don't understand how library staff takes the place of another board member by law.
Well, so if there was another board member, then you get into like public meeting situation.
So then
so
the
if you-
other board members just go uninformed?
So, Kimmy, I will say that like, I think, and I truly believe this, that, you're onto something there. We should have had a conversation before an offer was made.
I agree.
I do think we messed up the process. And that's unfortunate. So, yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you there.
Is that, my question is that falling, how we structured the interview, offer, all of that, that's falling, I assume, under some sort of city policy that then dictates how that looks for each.
That is the way
department,
the
correct?
city has been doing. I have hired 3 directors, since I've been here, and that includes the reason I'm saying 3 directors that have board members. But this is the same process that HR puts through, the city on this process, so I follow the same process that we've been doing, and one of them did include, Ms. Capel when she was hired also.
And just for some additional background on how the Century Code governs us, is the Century Code, provides kind of like the legal baseline framework. And a municipality can have a stricter or a slight, it might look slightly different, but it falls under that categorization of the Century Code. It's not in violation, but it can look slightly different, and I would imagine that's the process that Linda's speaking to, is that we have this process in the city that, that's how offers are done and things like that. I think it's unfortunate the timing of how this one was done. And like I said, I tend to agree with you that, we probably should have been able to have a conversation about this. In the future, I would hope that is what happens. Hopefully we don't hire another library director for 40 years, but, that's something that, I think thank you for bringing it forward, because I agree with you.
I think communication could have been better. I really do.
And I'm sorry.
Because Kimmy, that email that you sent, that, I called Linda the next day and I said, hey, we hired a library director, because it was news to me too, so.
And I think that was out of like me, we had just completed the interview process. I assumed it would have been part of the director's report, so I jumped to wanting to just personally know without actually looking at what's the process and how does it go. And if it was quoted as you had mentioned, because I too went immediately to Linda after your email and was like, oh no, what did I do? Like, did I say something wrong? Were we not ready? What was the actual process? Since this was my first involvement in the hiring process. For clarification, if it was quoted as you said, obviously we don't have a hire yet. So if it was quoted as that, like you misspoke in that response, because as you know, it was not on the agenda and I shouldn't have brought it up at that meeting. So I apologize for that, and for the confusion that resulted in, but yeah, the process did kind of go rather quickly. It was a first for me. I was on the board at the time of the last hire, but I was not involved in the interview process and all of that, so it was presented kind of in a similar way at that time, and that was my experience with it. So I do apologize for adding that to last month's meeting.
is the board responsible to hire the library director. It doesn't matter how it's been done in the past. It matters right now. Are we going to abide by century code? And it says it 2 times in our bylaws. Or are we going to just continue to do it like it's been done in the past because it's been done in the past? To me, it needs to be done correctly.
And I agree with you, Kim. This is the way that I was taught how to bring it forward to the board, was that after the process of the city, the HR takes care of everything else. Once they have done their due diligence and given a conditional offer type thing, it has to state in there that the library board has to approve the library director. So it is upon the vote of the board, and then upon me to bring the applicant in front of the commission for a recommendation of approval of your approval. That's how I've done it in the last 8 years and stuff. So that I will apologize. I could have done something different, but this is the way, the process that I've been doing since I've been here. And I do supervise over the library and the museum, and even with court and stuff, they have different boards. So yes, that's how I've done things. And right or wrong, that's why I wanted to make sure that this was done before it even comes to the commission, because I know that the library board has to make the approval, and then I take that recommendation forward.
So this is kind of this is an imperfect comparison, but this is, I think, the best comparison I can come up with. So the library board functions in a similar way to how like the planning and zoning board functions, where like we don't see Leonard Schwint at a lot of city commission meetings, because he takes a lot of his marching orders from the planning and zoning board. The library director is an employee of a department of the city, and we as the library board, oversee that department of the city. Is that a fair comparison? So it's just a very murky way with the way that libraries are actually functionally managed, and it gets really gray with what century code says and what city policies lay out in order to make century code actually work, because the library in and of itself isn't a separate entity that has its own budget and things like that. It's a department of the city. Does that make sense? So like the city employs the library director, we oversee the library director, but because century code lays this out, as the library board, it's our role to oversee the hiring, and I think we had a breakdown in that process.
I do as well. And I think rightfully so, there needs to be written policy so that this does not happen again. To me, the issue at hand is not only that you want to bring a candidate here today and we all say yes and it moves forward and da 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 da, but it's like, I was uninformed. I didn't know what was going on at all. So how do you want me to rightfully have a valid vote? It just was not done correctly. And honestly, to me, I feel like I didn't even know that there was candidates. I didn't even know that there was interviews taking place. That is not okay. And the way that I read century code, there's checks and balances to the reason why law is put into place. And the reason why we are to be that buffer between the city and hiring is so that this doesn't happen. We are here to make the process. And to me, I don't know. I feel like it's just not abiding by the law.
So and I don't know if I would agree that it's not abiding by the law, but I would say that I've had similar senses at times as a city commissioner. For whatever reason, I haven't been able to participate in the hiring of an administrative level employee. For example, this last week, we had public works, director, in interviews. I was able to participate in the initial Zoom screening, like the virtual screening, interviews with them. And then the in-person interviews, we had 2 of the 5 commissioners that were able to participate. One of the commissioners wasn't able to participate in any of those.
But everyone
And
was
so-
given fair chance.
Sure.
Correct?
But not always, because like sometimes it's a situation where like, I know what you're saying, but sometimes